Of all the games in the series, Metal Gear Rising might be the most infamous.
Adios, amigos.
Upon its release in 2013, it became an instant classic for hype moments and aura. And over 10 years later, it still gets attention for how outlandish it all was. And besides all that meme tomfoolery, the game itself was pretty damn good, especially when you consider that it was brought back to life from the brink of cancellation. With all the love and praise thrown on this game, you'd think that Konami and Platinum Games would have capitalized on that with a sequel. Well, over 13 years later, that's still not the case. So what happened? As I found out while researching for this video, that's a tough question to answer. But some clues as to what the sequel could have been, or could be, please Platinum Games, lie in the dark and depraved annals of history, also known as corporate Konami circa 2015. So let's start with the development history of the first game and what ideas were left behind. So the Metal Gear Rising we know today was a much different title from when it was first announced. All the way back during E3 2010, god I miss E3, we got our first look at the gameplay for Metal Gear Solid Rising after a simple PNG teaser the year prior. Yeah, this was going to be a canon entry that would serve as a bridge between MGS2 and 4. Raiden became the cyborg ninja in between games, and this game would explore how that all happened. The trailer showed off Raiden's new cybernetic enhancements and some action gameplay running on an early version of the Fox engine. It's really interesting contrasting the visuals and gameplay shown here and what we got in the final game. The Zandatsu mechanic in the final game is mostly limited to slicing enemies and a few interactable pieces in the environment. But Kojima Productions' initial idea was to give the player the ability to cut anything in the world to their advantage. This was certainly an ambitious leap for the team, going from pacifistic stealth gameplay to bloodthirsty hack-and-slash mayhem. And ambitious is probably the best way to describe this early concept of the game, for better and for worse. Development had stalled by late 2010, with the team citing struggles in finding a balance between the stealth expected of MGS and the action gameplay they wanted to create. Issues even extended to game performance, with early builds reportedly running as low as 10 frames per second due to the team's inexperience with the genre. Kojima soon canceled the project, and Yuji Korikado, longtime producer of the series, shared his perspective on the ultimate fate of Solid Rising. In the end, I think it's because we just couldn't nail down the game's core. We spent a long time within Kojima Productions making the game, and there were some aspects of it that were fun. But by the end of it, all we had was a big team and no real common image shared between everyone in it. We were at a dead end. Kojima told us make it any way you like, but I think we all had these preconceptions in our minds about what Metal Gear should be like. That wound up shackling us as we tried to make it. Most of us know how the rest of this story ends. Kojima approached Platinum Games to revitalize the project, and Revengeance was born out of the studio's new direction in gameplay and story. But let's examine what was left behind with Solid Rising. Even though the project had floundered, it wasn't by lack of effort from the team. Quite the opposite, in fact. This initial build of the game had a completed script, boss concepts, level designs, motion capture, even voice lines. Korikado lamented on this and stated that their game would have had the best bosses in the franchise. That is especially crushing knowing the high bar for boss battles established in the mainline games. The lead writer of Metal Gear Solid Rising, Etsu Tamari, has shared his enthusiasm in revisiting these cancelled ideas one day. I talk more about him and his work on the series in my previous video, go check that out if you haven't already. But let's dive into what could have been and what could still potentially be Metal Gear Rising 2. The following is an outline of the script written by Tamari and shared by anonymous developers just 2 years ago for the folks at Did You Know Gaming. Metal Gear Solid Rising was set to be a 3-act tale of revenge and rescue, taking place over 2 to 3 years. At the outset of the game, set in 2011, Raiden is not a cyborg yet, and his mission is to save Olga Gorlukovich's child, who is held captive by a wealthy American financier named Wexler.
7 minutes.
Wexler is keeping the child at Area 51, the very secret American military facility. Raiden manages to break Sonny free, but Wexler captures him and forces Raiden's partner named Vespa to pull out his intestines. Yo, holy shit. Afterwards, Wexler would crush Raiden's jaw with his own bare hands, leaving his tongue hanging down his chest, fade to black. More than a year later, in 2012, Raiden has a new black cybernetic body and is being force-fed memory suppressants. He is now known as Black Raiden, a barely human cyborg ninja. This was set to be a dark part of the game, as Black Raiden is now working for Wexler. With the player now in control, the game was going to constantly remind the player of the fact that the people they kill in the game as Black Raiden are the good guys. Eventually, the player would get into a boss fight where a psychic Japanese guy would appear to Black Raiden as Solid Snake, Snake's only appearance in the game. After the boss fight, Raiden would gradually recover his memories. Raiden manages to locate Vespa, and together they break out of Wexler's compound. Raiden's new cybernetic black suit gets damaged in the process, leading to him meeting up with Dr. Petrovich Madnar, who builds him a new suit. It's a white suit, to reflect Raiden now fighting for the side of justice, the very same cybernetic suit he wore in Metal Gear Solid 4. White Raiden and Vespa then set out for revenge on Wexler. Etsu Tamari has gone on record stating that the original script for Metal Gear Solid Rising was a much darker game than the one we got, and from this recently shared outline, yeah, it definitely seems that way. Raiden already went through so much traumatic shit in MGS2 and 4, so I kinda hate the fact that I would have liked to have seen these events play out. As morbid as the story could have been, I think it helps bridge the gap between 2 and 4. As things currently stand, we see an optimistic Raiden at the end of MGS2 turn jaded during the events of MGS4. Raiden's change in demeanor is briefly explained by Rose over codec in MGS4, but I think this cut material is compelling and illustrates his arc clearly in between games. And this is just one of the few potential plots for a Metal Gear Rising 2. There is another prequel concept that Kojima himself teased shortly after the release of the game. Honestly, I think that personally, if we're going to make a sequel to Rising, it should feature Frank Yeager as a main character versus zombies, nanomachine-powered zombies. That's what I'm proposing to Platinum and the producer of the project, but they seem to be ignoring me. I said I'll even write out the story for it, but our story writer said, no, that's okay. Don't worry about it. I can only infer that Kojima was probably kidding around with this concept, but seeing how we got a zombie Metal Gear game not too long after this, obviously someone was taking notes. That wraps up any official comments on alternative story or sequel story ideas related to MGR. So these ideas are more prequel sequel than a sequel, you know? And what about the ending of the actual game we got? Well, at the end of MGR, Raiden leaves Maverick, again, to go off on his own and presumably save child soldiers who are being taken advantage of by other PMCs and organizations. Raiden's arc in the game was pretty mixed, and after playing the game again recently on my channel, I'm still conflicted. I like that Raiden mirrors Snake's choice in that he leaves the military-industrial complex to go off and fight for what he believes in, but the road to get there was a little off the rails at times. Him being employed by a PMC in the first place after the events of MGS4 just feels so contradictory to his character, but I digress. This ending was left open for a presumed sequel to introduce a whole new story and cast of characters. So what info do we have on what a story continuation would have looked like? I don't want to get your hopes up because there's not much, unfortunately. The only teaser we got was of this image that flashed at the 2015 Taipei game show. Yes, it was actually that brief and just used in the middle of a PS4 marketing sizzle reel. Us Metal Gear fans are fucking scraping the bottom of the barrel for hints of new content. Anyways, it wasn't even confirmed that this image was a teaser for anything. An official statement from KJP announced that they didn't tease anything during the game show. Now, this statement alone doesn't really mean much, considering this was also around the time KJP was doing marketing shenanigans for Metal Gear Solid 5. If you know, you know, or just check out this video on my channel to learn more about that. But at the same time, Platinum Games released this 2-year anniversary promotional art for the first game with this caption: "Happy 2nd anniversary, what will Raiden be doing 2 years from now?" So with this information, it's possible to interpret this image in two ways. It was either simple promotion for the game's 2nd anniversary that was randomly spliced into this PS4 sizzle reel, or this was actually a teaser for a sequel that was characteristic of Koji Pro's ARG marketing of the time. Whatever the case may be, shortly after the supposed sequel teaser was released, news broke of Kojima's name being pulled from Konami's website and marketing. That led to the whole Konami and Koji Pro drama and the Metal Gear series being put on ice until recently. Here's my hypothesis based on this timeline of events. It is possible that Kojima Productions and Platinum Games were in early production of Metal Gear Rising 2 in early 2015. They started their viral marketing campaign a la Project Ogre for MGSV. It began with the Taipei game show flashing the number 2 and the subsequent public responses denying any announcement. Then, March 2015 rolls around. This tumultuous period of the company would make it difficult to continue development or third-party collaboration on any Metal Gear projects that weren't already far into production. That would include any MGR sequel concepts, which were abandoned. The only project that survived was, funnily enough, Metal Gear Survive. But that is likely because it started development around December 2015. So that means it likely never had much involvement from Kojima and former Konami staff, with the former having left the company that same December. Again, this is my own interpretation of what could have happened during this time.
My source is I made it the fuck up.
It's possible that there never were any plans for a Metal Gear Rising 2, but things just seem a little too sus to be coincidence.
Coincidence? I think not!
MGR being a hit, the Metal Gear brand as a whole riding a big hype wave leading up to MGSV, and the sly method of teasing a new game matched KJP's marketing MO. It's just unfortunate we can never really get definitive answers on a lot of what happened thanks to the corporate drama. Let's leave things on a more positive note. I want to remind you that Etsu Tamari, writer of the cancelled script and MGR, is still working at Konami. Like I said earlier in the video, he's expressed interest in returning to that cancelled script at some point. And although this is an old quote, he is open to continuing the story where the first game left off. Given that the series has had a comeback for the past few years, and Platinum Games has had a recent return to form with Ninja Gaiden 4, things might be shaping up for the long-awaited sequel. Call me crazy, but I wouldn't be too surprised if we hear something soon.
You're batshit insane!
Like that would ever happen. I'll only release my backup files of Rising 2 I have on this thumb drive if you subscribe to Basil, and also consider becoming a channel member. Starting now, YouTube members can ask questions in his Discord channel, and Basil will share his favorites to answer at the end of each video.
Thank you 100% totally real Hideo Kojima. Our very first member question comes from Gruage, who asks, which of Kojima's coming projects are you most looking forward to? That's a great question, as Kojima Productions announced a litany of new projects back in 2025. That includes some projects related to the studio's IP, a Death Stranding animated film, a live-action film, and an animated series. I'm very curious to learn more about these projects, as we haven't gotten too many adaptations of Koji Pro's work over the years, especially for their work post-Konami. Seeing another person's take on Kojima's strange world is something we don't get very often, and of these projects, I think I'm most looking forward to the Death Stranding Mosquito anime, namely due to the writer behind the project who is credited for writing the 2013 film Prisoners. As for Kojima-directed games, Fizzent has me the most excited as an MGS fan, but OD has me the most curious overall. We got a taste of Kojima's take on horror with PT over 10 years ago, and although we never got to see its full potential, Death Stranding has been a great showcase of Kojima's affinity for the supernatural. The BT sections in both Death Stranding games are some of the most memorable and intense moments. A title dedicated to his style of fear that also incorporates his out-of-the-box gameplay mechanics could be a much-needed refresher amongst the AAA horror space. Thank you, Gruage, for your support, and to all my channel members shown on screen. If you'd like to have your questions answered and support my content, consider becoming a member with the link in the description. Links for Discord, Twitter, all the other stuff can be found below. Until next time, keep on keeping on.